The harsh wind swept across the Montana plains, carrying with it the scent of coming rain as Heath Morgan urged his horse along the narrow mountain trail. He'd been tracking a small herd of wild mustangs for 3 days, hoping to add a few strong ones to his breeding stock, when the sound reached his ears, a desperate, racking cough that didn't belong to any animal he knew. Heath pulled his dun gelding to a halt, tilting his head to listen more carefully. There it was again, unmistakably human. He dismounted, looping Ranger's reins around a scrub pine, and moved cautiously toward the sound. The trail bent sharply around a large boulder, and as he rounded it, he saw her. A young woman huddled against the rock face, her body racked with violent coughs. Her once fine blue traveling dress was torn and muddy, her dark blonde hair falling loose from what had likely been an elegant arrangement. Even in her disheveled state, Heath could see she was beautiful and in serious trouble. "Madam?" he called, approaching slowly so as not to frighten her. "Are you all right?" She looked up, startled, revealing feverish blue eyes in a face pale as milk except for 2 bright spots of color high on her cheekbones. Relief flickered across her features before another coughing fit doubled her over. "Help?" she managed between coughs. "Please." Heath knelt beside her, instinctively reaching to check her forehead. It burned beneath his touch. "You're running a terrible fever. What happened? Where's your horse? Your traveling companions?" "Ambushed," she whispered, her voice raw. "2 days ago. Horse. Spooked. Through me. Been walking. Trying to find help." Heath's jaw clenched. Bandits were becoming more common on these trails, preying on settlers and travelers heading west. "I'm Heath Morgan. My ranch is about 3 hours' ride from here. Can you tell me your name, madam?" "Diana," she managed before another coughing fit seized her. "Diana Calloway. Miss Calloway, I need to get you to shelter. My place is closest." Heath glanced at the darkening sky. "Storm's coming. Can you stand?" She tried, using the rock for support, but her legs gave way beneath her. Heath caught her before she hit the ground, noting with concern how light she felt in his arms. "I've got you," he said, lifting her easily. "Just hold on." Diana's head fell against his shoulder as he carried her back to where Ranger waited. The horse snorted nervously at the unfamiliar burden, but Heath soothed him with quiet words as he somehow managed to mount while still holding Diana securely. "Lean back against me," he instructed, arranging her sideways across the saddle. "I won't let you fall." Diana nodded weakly, her eyes fluttering closed as she gave in to the exhaustion and fever. Heath wrapped one arm firmly around her waist, holding her steady against his chest while keeping the reins in his other hand. Her body radiated heat through her clothing, confirming his fears about the severity of her illness. "Let's go, Ranger," he murmured, turning the horse back toward home. "Easy now." The first fat raindrops began to fall as they rode, quickly turning into a steady downpour. Heath pulled his oilskin coat around Diana as best he could, trying to shield her from the worst of it, but by the time the outline of his ranch house appeared through the curtain of rain, they were both soaked through. Heath's ranch wasn't large by Montana standards, just a sturdy 2-bedroom house, a barn, and a bunkhouse for the 2 hands he employed. As he approached, he saw Jacob, his foreman, emerge from the barn. "Boss, we were getting worried with this storm rolling in." Jacob broke off, eyes widening at the sight of Diana. "What happened?" "Found her on the north trail," Heath called over the rain. "She's burning up with fever. Bandits got her party 2 days ago." Jacob hurried to take Ranger's reins as Heath dismounted carefully, keeping Diana secure in his arms. "I'll see to your horse. You get her inside." "Thanks. Send for Doc Patterson if the rain lets up." Heath carried Diana toward the house, shouldering open the door and immediately heading for the small guest bedroom. He laid her gently on the bed, concern deepening as he saw how her sodden clothes clung to her frame. She'd need dry garments, but he hesitated. It wouldn't be proper, and yet leaving her in wet clothes would only worsen her condition. "Miss Calloway," he said, touching her shoulder. "Diana, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and she looked at him with unfocused eyes. "Cold," she whispered. "I know. You need dry clothes." Heath cleared his throat. "I don't have any women's things, but I can lend you a shirt. Can you? Can you manage to change if I help you sit up?" Diana nodded weakly. Heath quickly retrieved a clean flannel shirt from his room and returned to find her struggling to undo the tiny buttons of her dress with trembling fingers. "Here," he said, setting the shirt beside her. I'll step out. Call if you need help." He closed the door behind him and went to stoke the fire in the main room, adding several logs to build up the heat. The wind howled outside, rain lashing against the windows. No chance of getting the doctor tonight. After what seemed a reasonable time, he knocked softly. "Miss Calloway?" When there was no answer, he cautiously opened the door to find her unconscious on the bed, having managed to remove only her outer dress. The shirt lay untouched beside her. Heath muttered a prayer for guidance. There was no proper way to handle this, but he couldn't leave her in wet undergarments. Moving with clinical efficiency, he managed to replace her sodden clothes with his dry shirt, keeping his eyes averted as much as possible while preserving her modesty. Once she was dressed in the oversized garment, he covered her with every blanket he could find in the house. Even so, she shivered violently, her breathing shallow and punctuated by those terrible coughs. Heath pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down, preparing for a long night. He knew enough about lung ailments to recognize the danger. Without proper care, fevers like this could quickly turn deadly. Throughout the night, he tended to her, bathing her forehead with cool water, supporting her through the worst coughing fits, and coaxing sips of water between her parched lips. When her fever spiked dangerously high, he placed damp cloths on her wrists and neck, changing them frequently as they warmed from her skin. Sometime after midnight, Diana began to thrash in delirium, calling out names Heath didn't recognize, pleading with unseen assailants. He caught her flailing hands gently in his own. "You're safe," he repeated, over and over. "You're safe now, Diana." The sound of her name seemed to penetrate the fevered dreams. She stilled somewhat, her fingers curling around his as if seeking an anchor in her stormy unconsciousness. Heath looked down at their joined hands, his large and calloused from years of ranch work, hers small and surprisingly strong despite her illness. Something stirred in his chest, an unfamiliar protectiveness that went beyond basic human decency. As dawn approached, Diana's fever finally broke. Heath had dozed off in the chair, his hands still holding hers, when a change in her breathing woke him. Her face had relaxed, the unhealthy flush fading, and her skin felt merely warm rather than burning hot. Relief washed over him as he gently withdrew his hand and stood to stretch his cramped muscles. Through the window, he could see the storm had passed, leaving behind a clear spring morning. He'd send Jacob for the doctor as soon as the trails were passable. Heath quietly left the room to prepare coffee and something for her to eat when she woke. His kitchen skills were limited but serviceable, a necessity for a bachelor rancher. He was stirring a pot of oatmeal when a small sound made him turn. Diana stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, drowning in his flannel shirt with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her hair fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, and her face was pale but alert. "You shouldn't be up," Heath said, abandoning the oatmeal to guide her to a chair. Her voice cracked, and she coughed, though less violently than before. "I woke up in strange clothes, in a strange bed. I needed to see." "Of course," Heath poured water into a cup and offered it to her. I apologize for the clothes. It was necessary. You were soaked through and burning with fever. A blush colored her cheeks as she accepted the water. You saved my life, Mr. Morgan. Propriety seems a small concern by comparison. Heath returned to the stove, oddly flustered by her direct gaze. It's just Heath, and you're still not well, Miss Calloway. The doctor will come today, but until then, you need rest and nourishment. Diana, she corrected, watching him spoon oatmeal into a bowl. After spending the night in your shirt, I think we can dispense with formalities. The hint of humor in her voice made Heath glance up in surprise. Despite her obvious weakness, there was a spark of spirit in her eyes that he hadn't expected. Diana, he agreed, setting the bowl before her with a tentative smile. Can you manage this? It's nothing fancy. She nodded, taking the spoon. Thank you for everything. As she ate slowly, Heath studied her more carefully in the morning light. She was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps 22 or 23 to his 30 years. There was a refinement to her features and speech that spoke of Eastern education and good breeding, making her presence on a remote Montana trail all the more puzzling. May I ask what brings you to these parts? He inquired, sitting across from her with his own breakfast. It's unusual to see a lady traveling these trails alone. Diana set down her spoon, her expression clouding. I wasn't alone originally. I was traveling with my brother and his business partner. She paused, swallowing hard. We were headed to Helena. My brother Philip has had mining interests there. Heath noted her slip into past tense. The bandits. She nodded, eyes downcast. 3 men. They came upon our camp at dawn. Philip tried to resist when they took our valuables. Her voice faltered. They shot him, Mr. Winters, the partner, ran. I don't know what happened to him. I managed to mount my horse, but in the chaos, something spooked her. She threw me and bolted. She looked up, eyes glistening. I've been walking since, trying to reach Helena. Then the coughing started. I'm sorry about your brother, Heath said quietly. A tear slipped down her cheek. I kept thinking if I could just reach Helena, somehow. But now I don't even know if Philip is alive or dead. Heath considered her words carefully. Helena's still a good 4-day ride from here, and you're in no condition to travel. When the doctor comes, we'll send word to the marshal about the attack. If your brother survived, they might have news. And if he didn't, the question hung between them, heavy with implications. A young unmarried woman alone in the territory, without family or resources. Then we'll figure something out, Heath assured her, though he wasn't sure what that might be. First, you need to recover. Diana managed a small, grateful smile that transformed her face, highlighting a dimple in her left cheek. You're very kind to a stranger. Out here, kindness isn't optional, Heath replied, rising to clear their bowls. It's survival. By mid-morning, Jacob returned with Doc Patterson, a grizzled veteran of the Civil War who'd settled in the nearby town of Pinecrest years ago. The doctor examined Diana thoroughly while Heath waited outside the bedroom door. Well? Heath asked when the doctor emerged. Pneumonia, most likely, Doc Patterson said, closing his bag. Caught in time, thankfully. She's young and seems strong despite her ordeal. I've left medicine she'll need it every 4 hours, including through the night. Heath nodded, absorbing the instructions. Will she recover fully? With proper care, yes. But she can't travel for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. The doctor fixed Heath with a pointed look. This poses a delicate situation, Morgan. A young unmarried woman staying at a bachelor's ranch. I'm aware of the impropriety, Heath said stiffly. But I can hardly turn her out. No, of course not. The doctor stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps Mrs. Wilkins from town could come stay as a chaperone. Heath grimaced. Edith Wilkins was the worst gossip in 3 counties. I was thinking Jacob's wife might be willing. She could use the guest room, and I'll bunk with the hands until Miss Calloway is well enough to travel. The doctor nodded approvingly. A sensible solution. I'll check on her again in 3 days unless you need me sooner. After seeing the doctor out, Heath returned to Diana's room. She was propped up against the pillows, looking exhausted from the examination but more alert than before. The doctor says you'll recover, but you need rest. At least 2 weeks before you can travel. Diana's eyes widened. 2 weeks? But I need to find out about Philip to reach Helena. I've already sent Jacob to telegraph the marshal in Helena. Heath interrupted gently. We should hear something by tomorrow. In the meantime, Jacob's wife, Sarah, will be coming to stay. She's a fine woman, and her presence will ensure everything is proper. Understanding dawned in Diana's eyes. Because I'm staying in a house with an unmarried man. People talk, Heath said simply. I don't care much about gossip, but your reputation, my reputation. Diana repeated with a brittle laugh. Mr. Morgan Heath, I appreciate your concern, but I fear my reputation is the least of my worries right now. Heath studied her face, seeing the grief and uncertainty she was trying to mask with practicality. All the same, he said quietly, Sarah will be good company for you, and I'll sleep in the bunkhouse. Diana started to protest, but a coughing fit overtook her. Heath quickly poured water from the pitcher beside the bed. Rest, he insisted after she had recovered. Doctor's orders. I'll bring your medicine in a few hours. As he turned to leave, Diana caught his sleeve. Thank you, she said softly, for finding me, for caring what happens to me. Heath felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest at her touch. Anyone would have done the same. Her lips curved in a small smile. We both know that's not true. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Sarah Jackson, Jacob's kindly wife, arrived with a trunk of clothing she insisted Diana borrow. Heath continued running the ranch but checked on Diana frequently, bringing wildflowers he'd gathered on his rides and books from his modest library to help pass her convalescent hours. True to his word, Heath slept in the bunkhouse, but he took his meals at the main house with Diana and Sarah. These mealtimes gradually lengthened as Diana grew stronger and more animated. Heath found himself sharing stories of his 10 years in Montana, how he'd come west after the war with nothing but determination and the skills he'd learned on his family's Kentucky farm. You built all this yourself? Diana asked one evening, gesturing to the solid house around them. It's impressive. Heath shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. Started small. 1 room and a lean-to for the horses. Added on as I could afford it. Still, Diana insisted. To create something like this from nothing takes vision, courage, and stubbornness, Sarah added with a knowing smile. Don't let his modesty fool you, Diana. Heath Morgan is the most determined man in the territory. When the blizzard of '72 hit, he rode out every day for a week to bring in stranded cattle his and his neighbors. Saved half the herds in the valley while nearly freezing himself. Heath shifted in his chair. Jacob exaggerates when he tells that story. Jacob doesn't exaggerate, Sarah countered. He understates, if anything. Diana's gaze lingered on Heath with a new appreciation that made him unaccountably warm. The telegram arrived on the 4th day of Diana's stay. Heath had just returned from checking fence lines when Jacob handed him the yellow paper. He read it quickly, his expression tightening. What is it? Sarah asked, emerging from the kitchen. News from Helena. Heath folded the paper, debating how to share its contents with Diana. Is she awake? Sarah nodded. She's been up for an hour. I helped her move to the chair by the window. Heath found Diana gazing out at the mountains, a borrowed shawl around her shoulders. The afternoon sun caught in her hair, bringing out golden highlights he hadn't noticed before. She turned at his approach, her face lighting with a smile that faltered when she saw his expression. "You have news," she said, straightening. "About Philip." Heath nodded, taking the chair opposite hers. "The marshal found your camp." "I'm sorry, Diana. Your brother didn't survive his injuries." Diana's face drained of color, but she didn't cry. Instead, she gripped the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Are they certain it was him? The description matches what you told us. And they found papers identifying him as Philip Calloway." She closed her eyes briefly. "I knew, really. In my heart, I knew he was gone. But I hoped." "There's more," Heath said gently. "They arrested 2 men matching the description of the bandits. The third was killed in a shootout. Your brother's partner, Winters, made it to Helena and reported the attack." Diana's eyes flew open. "Robert is alive? Thank God for that, at least." "The marshal says Winters has been asking about you. He feared you were lost." "Robert and Philip were like brothers," Diana explained. "We've all known each other since childhood. He must be devastated." Heath handed her the telegram. "The marshal says Winters wants to come fetch you as soon as you're well enough to travel." Diana read the paper, a small frown forming between her brows. "I see. Is something wrong?" She folded the telegram carefully. "No, it's just. Robert was always very protective, almost as much as Philip. I'm not surprised he wants to come immediately." Something in her tone suggested mixed feelings about this protectiveness, but Heath didn't press. "According to the doctor, you shouldn't travel for at least another 10 days. I can send word when you're ready." "Thank you." Diana looked back toward the window, her profile etched with grief. "I should feel relieved that there's someone to take responsibility for me, a woman alone in this territory." "Is that what you want?" Heath asked quietly. "Someone to take responsibility for you?" Diana turned to him, her blue eyes searching his face. "What I want and what's possible are often different things, Mr. Morgan. Surely you've found that to be true as well." Before Heath could respond, a coughing fit seized her, less severe than before but still concerning. He quickly poured water from the nearby pitcher. "You should rest," he said, helping her back to bed. "The news is a shock. Sleep if you can." Diana caught his hand as he adjusted the blanket. "Will you stay? Just for a little while? I don't want to be alone with my thoughts right now." Heath hesitated only briefly before settling into the chair beside her bed. "I'll stay." He remained until she drifted off, her hand still loosely holding his, and found himself studying her face in repose. The grief was there in the slight furrow between her brows, but there was strength too in the set of her jaw. In just a few days, Diana Calloway had become a presence in his home that seemed both natural and extraordinary, as if she belonged there but also brightened it in ways he hadn't known it needed brightening. The realization troubled him. In 10 years, he'd built his life carefully, keeping entanglements to a minimum. He'd had his share of flirtations in town, even courted the schoolteacher briefly 2 years ago, but nothing had ever threatened the independence he valued. Yet watching Diana sleep, he felt the foundations of that carefully constructed solitude begin to shift. The following days brought steady improvement in Diana's health. Her cough gradually subsided, and color returned to her cheeks. By the end of the first week, she was strong enough to take short walks on the porch, and by the 10th day, she joined Heath for a careful stroll around the nearest paddock, her arm linked through his for support. "Your ranch is beautiful," she remarked, pausing to watch a mare and foal graze in the distance. "So peaceful. Different from what I expected of Montana." "What did you expect?" Heath asked, enjoying the weight of her hand on his arm. More wildness, I suppose. Danger around every corner. She smiled ruefully. Though I certainly found that on the trail. There's plenty of wildness still, Heath acknowledged. But there's beauty in it too. The first time I saw these mountains, I knew I'd found where I belonged. Diana glanced up at him. You speak of it like a love affair. Maybe it is, in a way. Heath guided her to a bench beneath an old cottonwood. What about you? Where do you belong? Diana Calloway. She sat beside him, arranging her borrowed skirts. I'm not sure anymore. Boston was home for most of my life. But after our parents died 3 years ago, Philip became restless. He'd always been fascinated by the stories of fortunes made out west. She sighed. When he decided to invest in the Helena mines, I chose to come with him rather than stay with our aunt in Boston. That was brave. Or foolish, she countered. A proper Boston lady would have stayed where it was safe, found a suitable husband, and settled into a predictable life. Is that what you wanted? A predictable life? Diana considered the question seriously. I wanted possibility. In Boston, I could see the whole path laid out before me, the right husband, the right house, the right number of children. Everything planned and proper. She looked toward the mountains. Out here there's sky, room to breathe. Heath studied her profile, struck by how closely her words echoed his own feelings when he'd first come west. Even with the dangers? Maybe because of them, she admitted. Danger makes you feel alive in a way safety never can. Is that terrible? No, Heath said softly. It's honest. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition, a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. Diana was the first to look away, a flush rising to her cheeks. I should probably return to the house, she said. I don't want to overtire myself. Heath stood, offering his arm again. Doc Patterson is coming tomorrow for a final check. He'll determine if you're fit to travel. The reminder of her eventual departure hung between them as they walked back. Heath found himself slowing their pace, reluctant to end this moment of quiet companionship. That evening, after dinner, Heath found Diana on the porch swing, wrapped in a shawl against the cooling night air. The sunset painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. May I join you? He asked. She nodded, moving slightly to make room. They swung in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I received another telegram today, Heath finally said. From Robert Winters. He plans to arrive the day after tomorrow, assuming the doctor clears you for travel. Diana's hands tightened on the shawl. So soon? He seems eager to reach you. Yes, he would be. Diana's voice held a note Heath couldn't quite interpret. Robert has always been attentive. Heath chose his next words carefully. Is he more than your brother's partner to you? Diana glanced at him sharply. You're very direct, Mr. Morgan. Heath, he corrected. And yes, I find directness saves time. A small smile touched her lips. Robert has hoped for many years that I might consider him as more than a family friend. Philip encouraged the connection. And you? Diana looked back toward the mountains. I've always been fond of Robert. He's kind, responsible, financially secure. But, Heath prompted when she didn't continue. But I never felt with him what I thought I should feel for the man I would marry. She turned to face Heath fully. Have you ever been in love, Heath Morgan? The question caught him off guard. I thought I was once, during the war. A girl from a neighboring farm in Kentucky. We wrote letters for 2 years. I came home planning to propose. What happened? She'd married my cousin 6 months earlier. Heath shrugged, the old pain long dulled. Said she couldn't wait forever, not knowing if I'd survive. I'm sorry. It was for the best. After the war, I wasn't the same person who left. We would have made each other miserable. Heath studied Diana's thoughtful expression. Why do you ask about love? Because I've wondered if I'm capable of it, real love, not just fondness or obligation. Sometimes I think perhaps I expect too much. That real love is quieter, more practical than poetry and novels suggest. And what do they suggest? Heath asked, genuinely curious. Diana's eyes took on a distant look. That it's like a force of nature, something that changes you irrevocably, that makes you both more yourself and something entirely new. Sounds powerful, Heath murmured. And dangerous. Yes, Diana agreed softly. Like Montana. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. Heath became acutely aware of how close they sat, of the subtle scent of lavender that clung to her hair, of how the porch lantern gilded her features in warm light. Before he could think better of it, Heath reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against the softness of her cheek. Diana's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Diana, he began, not entirely sure what he meant to say. The screen door creaked open, and Sarah stepped onto the porch. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. It's time for your medicine, Diana. The moment shattered. Diana rose quickly, avoiding Heath's gaze. Of course. Thank you, Sarah. As she disappeared inside, Heath remained on the swing, his thoughts in turmoil. What had he been thinking? Diana Calloway was a refined Eastern lady, recently bereaved, temporarily in his care. In 2 days, she would leave with a man who had known her all her life, who could offer her stability and a return to the world she knew. And yet he couldn't forget the look in her eyes when she spoke of love as a force of nature, or the way she hadn't pulled away from his touch. The next morning, Doc Patterson pronounced Diana well enough to travel, though he cautioned her to take it easy for another week. The pneumonia's cleared, but your body's been through an ordeal, he advised. No strenuous activity, plenty of rest and good food. I'll make sure she follows your instructions, Heath promised, earning a raised eyebrow from Diana. I'm not a child, Mr. Morgan, she said after the doctor left. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own recovery. Of course you are, Heath agreed, fighting a smile at her indignation. But you did nearly die on my watch. Forgive me for feeling some continued responsibility. Diana's expression softened. You've done more than enough. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. There's nothing to repay. She shook her head. There's everything to repay. My life, for starters. Heath stepped closer, lowering his voice though they were alone in the parlor. If you truly want to repay me, then answer one question honestly. Diana looked up at him warily. What question? Are you happy about leaving tomorrow? About going with Winters? She blinked, clearly surprised. It's not a matter of happiness. It's what must be done. Robert is offering me protection, a way to settle my brother's affairs honorably. That's not what I asked. Diana turned away, moving to the window. What would you have me say, Heath? That I've grown fond of this place in just 2 weeks? That I find myself reluctant to leave? She faced him again, her expression conflicted. What good would such admissions do either of us? Heath closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching her. They might do a great deal of good, depending on why you feel that way. Diana's eyes searched his, a vulnerability in them he hadn't seen before. Why do you think I feel that way? Instead of answering, Heath bent his head and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning a first exploration rather than a demand. For a breathless moment, Diana stood frozen. Then her hands came up to rest lightly on his chest, neither pushing him away nor pulling him closer. When he drew back, Her eyes remained closed for a heartbeat before opening to regard him with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. That was, she began. Improper, Heath finished for her. Presumptuous, and entirely necessary. Necessary? A hint of a smile touched her lips. I couldn't let you leave without knowing. Knowing what? Heath took her hands in his. That there might be a reason to stay, or at least a reason to consider staying. Diana's smile faded, replaced by genuine confusion. Heath, we barely know each other. 2 weeks ago, we were strangers. 2 weeks ago, I found a half-dead woman on a mountain trail and felt something I can't explain, a certainty that meeting you would change everything. Heath squeezed her hands gently. I'm not asking for promises, Diana. I'm asking for time. Time to see if what's growing between us could be something real. Diana withdrew her hands, not unkindly but firmly. Robert will be here tomorrow. He's traveled all this way, believing I need him. And do you? Need him? She hesitated. He's all that's left of my old life, my connection to Philip. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Diana's voice trembled slightly. Please understand. I've lost everything familiar, my brother, my plans, my sense of place in the world. I can't make such a momentous decision when I'm still reeling. Heath nodded slowly, accepting her words even as disappointment settled in his chest. I understand. He turned to leave, but Diana caught his arm. Heath, what happened just now? It wasn't unwelcome, just unexpected. Their eyes held for a long moment, possibility hovering between them like a tangible thing. Then Sarah's voice called from the kitchen, announcing that lunch was ready, and the moment passed. The rest of the day unfolded with a strange tension underlying the ordinary routines. Heath busied himself with ranch work, staying out longer than necessary, while Diana helped Sarah with household tasks and packed the few belongings she'd accumulated during her stay. They barely spoke at dinner, though Heath caught Diana watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, her expression thoughtful. After the meal, he excused himself to check on a mare about to foal, grateful for the legitimate escape. The night air cleared his head somewhat as he walked to the barn. He'd been a fool to kiss her, to put her in such an awkward position when she was still vulnerable. Whatever he thought he felt, whatever he thought she might feel, it was unfair to press her now. When he returned to the house hours later, the lamps were extinguished except for one in the parlor. To his surprise, Diana sat in the rocking chair, a blanket around her shoulders, staring into the dying embers of the fire. You should be resting, he said from the doorway. Big day tomorrow. She looked up, her face half in shadow. I couldn't sleep. Heath hesitated, then entered the room, taking the chair opposite hers. Having second thoughts about leaving? Having thoughts about everything. Diana's voice was quiet but steady. About what my life was supposed to be and what it's become. About what happens next. And what have you decided? She met his gaze directly. That I need to see this through. Robert is coming tomorrow. I owe him the courtesy of hearing what he has to say, what he proposes for my future. Heath nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling in his chest. That seems fair. But, Diana continued, her voice stronger, I also owe myself the truth, and the truth is, I'm not the same woman who left Boston with her brother. I've changed. What I want has changed. What do you want, Diana? Heath asked softly. She looked toward the window, where the moon silvered the distant mountains. Space to discover who I am now. Time to grieve. And she turned back to him. The chance to explore what I've begun to feel here. With you. Hope kindled in Heath's chest. Are you saying? I'm saying I won't be leaving with Robert tomorrow? Diana clarified. At least not immediately. I'll explain that I need more time to recover, Time to consider my options. And what will those options include? Diana's smile was small but genuine. Perhaps staying in Montana a while longer. Getting to know a certain rancher beyond the circumstances of our meeting. Heath fought the urge to cross the room and take her in his arms. Instead, he nodded, respecting the careful balance she was trying to maintain. I think that's wise. Do you? She raised an eyebrow. Most would call it scandalous. I'm not most people. No, Diana agreed softly. You're not. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the fire's embers casting a warm glow between them. Finally, Diana rose, drawing the blanket more closely around her shoulders. I should try to sleep. Tomorrow will be complicated. Heath stood as well. I'll be there whatever happens, whatever you decide. Diana stepped closer, reaching up to touch his cheek gently. Thank you for finding me on that trail, Heath Morgan. Before he could respond, she leaned up and brushed her lips against his a fleeting kiss, but one that held promise. Then she was gone, leaving Heath standing alone in the parlor, the ghost of her touch lingering on his skin. Robert Winters arrived precisely at noon the next day, driving a rented buggy from the nearest stage stop. Heath watched from the porch as the vehicle approached, taking the measure of the man who represented Diana's past. Winters was perhaps 40, with a trimmed beard and the prosperous look of a successful businessman. His clothes were expensive but practical for travel, and he carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to respect. Heath stepped forward as the buggy pulled up. Mr. Winters? I'm Heath Morgan. Winters descended, extending his hand. Mr. Morgan, I can't thank you enough for taking care of Diana. When I heard she was alive, well, it was nothing short of miraculous. His sincerity seemed genuine, making it difficult for Heath to dislike him as he'd been inclined to do. Anyone would have done the same. Not true, but gracious of you to say. Winters glanced eagerly toward the house. Is she well enough to travel? The telegram wasn't specific about her condition. Before Heath could answer, the front door opened, and Diana appeared, wearing one of Sarah's dresses, her hair neatly arranged. She looked beautiful and composed, though Heath could detect the tension in her posture. Robert, she called, moving carefully down the porch steps. Diana! Winters hurried forward, taking both her hands in his. My dear girl, I've been frantic with worry. When Philip, he broke off, emotion overcoming him. I'm so sorry, Diana. So terribly sorry about your brother. Diana's eyes filled with tears. I know. I still can't quite believe he's gone. Winters pulled her into a gentle embrace, and Heath looked away, feeling like an intruder on their grief. It was a shared history he couldn't be part of, years of memories and connections that bound them together. Come inside, Diana said, pulling back from Robert's embrace. You must be tired from your journey. Sarah has prepared lunch. Heath followed them into the house, noting how naturally Winters took Diana's arm, how familiar they seemed together. It was a painful reminder of the gulf between his brief connection with Diana and her lifetime of shared experiences with this man. Lunch was a strained affair, with Winters dominating the conversation, updating Diana on the situation in Helena, the mining interests, Philip's affairs, the investigation into the bandits. I've made all the arrangements, he explained between bites of Sarah's stew. The claim is being processed, and Philip's share of the mine will pass to you. I can manage everything, of course, until you decide what you wish to do with it. That's very thoughtful, Diana said, her eyes briefly meeting Heath's across the table. But I'm not sure I'm ready to make decisions yet. Winters patted her hand. Of course not, my dear. That's why I'm here to handle these difficult matters for you. Once we return to Helena, you can rest and recover while I settle everything. About that, Robert. Diana set down her spoon. The doctor feels I shouldn't undertake a long journey just yet. My recovery from pneumonia has been good but not complete. Winters frowned. But surely a few days in a comfortable buggy would be better than remaining here? No offense to your hospitality, Mr. Morgan, he added quickly. But Diana should be in town with proper amenities and female companionship. I have both here, Diana said firmly. Sarah has been a godsend, and Heath's home is more comfortable than most hotels I've seen in the West. Even so, Winters persisted. Your place is with me now. I promised Philip I would look after you if anything happened to him. Diana's back straightened almost imperceptibly. My brother had no right to dispose of me like property, Robert, however well-intentioned he might have been. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Heath suppressed a smile at Diana's spirited response, while Winters looked taken aback. Of course not, he finally said. I didn't mean to suggest. It's just that I feel responsible for your welfare. Diana, surely you understand that. I do, she acknowledged, her tone softening. And I appreciate your concern, truly. But I need time, Robert. Time to grieve, to consider what comes next. Winters studied her face, confusion evident in his expression. What are you saying, exactly? Diana took a deep breath. I'm saying I won't be returning to Helena with you today. I'll stay here another week or two, until I'm fully recovered and have had time to think clearly about my future. Stay here. Winters looked around as if seeing the ranch house for the first time. With Mr. Morgan? Diana, surely you see how inappropriate that would be. Mrs. Jackson serves as chaperone, Heath interjected, unable to remain silent. Diana's reputation is carefully protected here. Winters regarded him with new suspicion. With all due respect, Mr. Morgan, this arrangement may have been necessary when Diana was too ill to travel, but now it seems irregular. Robert, Diana said, drawing his attention back to her. My mind is made up on this point. I'm grateful for your concern and your willingness to help with Philip's affairs, but I need this time. Winters looked from Diana to Heath and back again, understanding slowly dawning in his eyes. Has something developed between you two? Is that what this is about? Diana flushed but held his gaze steadily. What's developed is my need for independence. For the first time in my life, I'm not defined by my relationship to someone else, not as Philip's sister or as your friend. I need to discover who Diana Calloway is on her own terms. And that discovery requires you to remain here, specifically? Winters asked, his tone sharpening. With him. It requires me to make my own choices, Diana replied evenly. This is the first one. The tension in the room was palpable. Heath remained silent, recognizing that this was Diana's battle to fight, though every instinct urged him to intervene. Finally, Winters pushed back from the table. I see I've misunderstood the situation entirely. I thought I was coming to rescue a helpless woman. Instead, I find you've already found other arrangements. Robert, please, Diana began, but he cut her off with a raised hand. No, it's quite all right. I've always known you had a streak of willfulness beneath that proper Boston exterior. Philip thought you'd outgrow it. He stood, straightening his waistcoat. Clearly, he was mistaken. Heath rose as well, his patience wearing thin. Mr. Winters, you're upset. Perhaps we should continue this conversation after you've had time to rest. I don't need rest, Mr. Morgan. I need to understand what game is being played here. Winters turned back to Diana. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Throwing away years of connection, of understanding. For what? Some romantic notion of Western independence? A brief infatuation with the man who happened to find you. Diana stood slowly, her face pale but determined. I'm not throwing away anything, Robert. I'm asking for time. But if you can't grant me that simple courtesy, then perhaps our connection isn't what I thought it was. Winters stared at her for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. Very well. I'll return to Helena alone. When you come to your senses, you know where to find me. With that, he strode from the room. Diana remained standing, her hands gripping the edge of the table, as the front door slammed behind him. I'll see him out, Heath said quietly, touching her shoulder briefly before following Winters. He caught up to the older man as he was climbing into the buggy. Mr. Winters. Winters turned, his expression cold. Come to gloat, Mr. Morgan? No. Heath met his gaze directly. I came to say that whatever you think is happening here, Diana's well-being is my only concern. If she chooses to return to Helena with you eventually, I won't stand in her way. Winters studied him for a moment. You care for her. It wasn't a question, but Heath answered anyway. Yes, so do I. For many years. Winters adjusted his driving gloves. She deserves better than a life of hardship on a Montana ranch. That should be her decision, don't you think? Winters snorted. She's grieving, confused, romanticizing this place because it represents escape from her pain. When reality sets in, when she realizes what she's giving up, she'll regret it. Maybe, Heath conceded, but it will be her regret, not one forced on her by others making choices for her. The two men regarded each other with grudging respect. Finally, Winters picked up the reins. Take care of her, Morgan. Whatever else I think of this situation, I do want her happiness. So do I, Heath replied simply. He watched as the buggy pulled away, dust rising in its wake. When he returned to the house, he found Diana still in the dining room, sitting with her head in her hands. Are you all right? He asked, taking the chair beside her. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. I've hurt him. He didn't deserve that. No, Heath agreed. He seems like a good man who cares for you. He is. He's been part of my life forever. Diana sighed deeply. And yet, when he spoke of taking me back to Helena, of managing everything for me, I felt suffocated, as if I were being fitted back into a box I've outgrown. What do you want, Diana? Heath asked, echoing his question from the night before. Not what you think you should want, or what others want for you. What do you truly want? She met his gaze directly. I want to know if what I feel for you is real or just gratitude and circumstance. I want to discover if I could belong in this wild, beautiful place. I want the freedom to choose my own path, even if that path leads to mistakes. Heath took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Those all sound like good wants to me. A small smile lifted the corners of her mouth. Even the part about not knowing if what I feel for you is real? Even that, he affirmed. Because it means you're being honest with me and with yourself. Diana leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. What happens now? Now, Heath said, brushing a gentle kiss against her temple. You take the time you need. We get to know each other properly, without illness or crisis hanging over us. And we see where it leads. Diana nodded, then pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. What if it leads nowhere? What if I decide I don't belong here after all? Then I'll help you pack and wish you well, Heath promised, though the thought pained him. But what if it leads somewhere wonderful? Her smile widened. Then I'll have made the best mistake of my life, staying here with the cowboy who found me coughing on a mountain trail. The weeks that followed took on a dreamlike quality for Heath. Diana's strength returned fully, and with it came a vibrancy that transformed his quiet ranch. She approached everything with curiosity and determination, learning to ride properly on a gentle mare Heath selected for her, helping Sarah with household tasks she'd never attempted in her privileged Eastern life, even trying her hand at simple ranch chores. You don't have to prove anything, Heath told her one evening. watching as she massaged her blistered hands after a day of helping with the garden. "I'm not proving anything," Diana insisted. "I'm learning. How can I know if I could be happy here if I don't understand what life here entails?" Her practical approach to their developing relationship both impressed and concerned Heath. While he admired her thoroughness, he sometimes worried she was evaluating life on the ranch as one might inspect a property for purchase, noting flaws and benefits with clinical detachment. But then there were moments, unexpected, breathtaking moments when her guard dropped completely. Like the morning he found her standing in the meadow beyond the house, surrounded by wildflowers, her face tilted toward the sun with an expression of such pure joy it stopped him in his tracks. Or the evening she fell asleep against his shoulder on the porch swing, trusting and vulnerable in a way that made his heart ache with tenderness. Their courtship progressed slowly, deliberately. Heath was careful not to rush her, allowing Diana to set the pace of their physical relationship. Their kisses grew more heated over time, hands learning the contours of each other's bodies, but always with restraint, a silent agreement to wait until they were both certain. A month after Robert Winter's departure, Heath received a letter from him, formally transferring Diana's share of her brother's mining claim to her direct control. The gesture surprised them both. "He's acknowledging your independence," Heath observed as Diana read the accompanying note. "Yes," she agreed softly. "It's his way of saying he respects my choice, even if he doesn't understand it." The mining claim proved more valuable than either had anticipated. With Heath's guidance, Diana hired a reputable manager in Helena to oversee the operation, providing her with a steady income independent of her decision about where to live. "You could go anywhere now," Heath pointed out one evening as they reviewed the financial reports. "San Francisco, back east, even Europe if you wanted." Diana set the papers aside, studying his face. "Are you trying to get rid of me, Heath Morgan?" "Never." He captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "But I need to know you're staying because you want to, not because you have no other options." "Is that what you think?" Diana moved from her chair to sit beside him on the sofa. "That I'm here by default?" Heath struggled to articulate his fear. I think sometimes dreams lose their shine when they become reality. The West looks romantic from a distance. Up close, it's hard work and isolation and winters that can kill the unprepared. "You think I don't see that?" Diana's voice held a hint of indignation. "Heath, I've been living here for nearly 2 months. I've seen the work you do from sunup to sundown. I've felt the loneliness of being miles from the nearest neighbor. And yet, she continued, her expression softening, I've also seen the sunset paint the mountains gold. I've felt the satisfaction of work done with my own hands. I've experienced a freedom I never knew in Boston." She touched his cheek gently. "And I've fallen in love with a man who truly sees me not as an ornament or a responsibility, but as a partner." Heath's heart thundered in his chest. "You love me?" Diana's smile was radiant. "Is that so surprising? How could I not love you, Heath Morgan? You saved my life. You gave me space to find myself. You've shown me what it means to build something meaningful with your own 2 hands. Heath pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I love you, Diana Calloway, more than I thought possible." She drew back enough to look into his eyes. "Enough to ask me to stay? Not just for now, but for always. Are you certain that's what you want?" Heath searched her face. "A life here with me? I've never been more certain of anything." Diana's eyes shone with conviction. "I've had 2 months to consider every possibility, to weigh every option. My heart and my mind have reached the same conclusion: I belong here. With you." Heath stood suddenly, pulling Diana to her feet. "Wait here." He strode to his bedroom, returning moments later with a small wooden box. Kneeling before her, He opened it to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small diamond. "It was my grandmother's," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. "I've kept it all these years, never thinking I'd find someone worthy of it, someone I wanted to share my life with completely." Diana's hands trembled as she reached for him. "Heath. Diana Calloway, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here? Knowing it won't always be easy, but promising it will always be true." "Yes," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Heath, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to gather her in his arms. Their kiss was deep and passionate, a ceiling of promises and dreams shared between them. "When?" Heath asked when they finally parted, both breathless. Diana laughed, the sound like music in the quiet house. "As soon as possible. I've waited long enough to begin my real life." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Pinecrest. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, with Sarah serving as Diana's attendant and Jacob standing beside Heath. News of the unlikely romance, the Boston lady and the Montana rancher, had spread through the county, drawing more well-wishers than either had expected. Even Robert Winters sent a telegram of congratulations along with a generous wedding gift, a pair of fine breeding horses delivered the day before the ceremony. "A peace offering," Diana remarked, reading the accompanying note. "And a good one." As Heath waited at the altar, watching Diana walk toward him in a cream-colored dress Sarah had helped her make, he marveled at the twists of fate that had brought them together. One moment of chance, his decision to take the northern trail that spring morning, had changed everything. Diana reached him, her eyes bright with joy as she placed her hand in his. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the Eastern lady who had found her true home in the West, and the cowboy who had found his heart when he carried a coughing stranger home from the trail. 5 years later, Heath stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching as Diana moved through the garden with their 3-year-old daughter, Lily, toddling beside her. Their son, Philip, named for Diana's brother, napped inside, barely 6 months old and already showing signs of his father's determined nature. The ranch had prospered under their joint care. Diana's business acumen, honed by years of observing her brother's enterprises, complemented Heath's practical knowledge perfectly. They had doubled the size of the herd, built a larger barn, and hired additional hands to manage the growing operation. But more important than the material success was the home they had created together, a place of warmth and love unlike anything Heath had known in his solitary years. Diana looked up, catching sight of him watching them. Her smile, still as radiant as the day he'd proposed, lit her entire face. She whispered something to Lily, who immediately ran toward Heath on chubby legs. "Papa!" she called, arms outstretched. "Up!" Heath swept his daughter into his arms, planting a kiss on her sun-warmed curls. "How's my girl? Helping Mama with the flowers?" "Planted seeds," Lily announced proudly. "Grow big, just like you," Heath agreed, setting her on his shoulders as Diana approached. "She's quite the gardener already," Diana said, reaching up to brush a smudge of dirt from their daughter's cheek. "Though more soil ended up on her dress than in the ground, I'm afraid." Heath grinned. A true rancher's daughter, not afraid to get dirty. Diana laughed, the sound still his favorite music after all these years. "Speaking of ranchers, Jacob says the new bull arrived. He wants you to inspect it when you have time." "I'll go now," Heath decided, lifting Lily down from his shoulders. "Want to come see the big bull, Princess?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, slipping her small hand into his larger one with complete trust. "I'll check on Philip," Diana said. "He should be waking soon." As Heath turned to lead Lily toward the barn, Diana caught his other hand. "Heath," he looked back, raising an eyebrow in question. "I was just thinking," she said, her eyes soft with emotion. How fortunate I am that you happened to take that particular trail that day, that you heard me coughing and stopped. Heath squeezed her hand, his heart full. Providence, my love. Some things are simply meant to be. Diana stood on tiptoe to kiss him lightly. I'll forever be grateful you carried me home that day. And I'll forever be grateful you stayed. Heath replied, the simple truth of it resonating in his soul. As he walked hand in hand with his daughter toward the barn, Heath glanced back at the house at the woman standing on the porch watching them go, her hand raised in a small wave. From strangers thrown together by chance to a family bound by the deepest love. Their journey had been unexpected and perfect in equal measure. Some men searched their whole lives for a purpose, a place to belong. Heath had found his the moment he'd gathered a coughing stranger into his arms and carried her home through the gathering storm, though it had taken them both some time to recognize the gift they'd been given. Now, with Diana and their children, the ranch had become more than just a place on a map. It was their legacy, their sanctuary, their shared dream made real through love and determination, a love story written not in the pages of a novel, but in the daily moments of a life built together in the wild, beautiful heart of Montana.